I just want to invest in people that really want to be the best that they can be. Hello, everyone. It's Todd Scrima and Robyn LaVassaur. We are short our buddy Jim Reed today because he's ill. We're doing this for branch managers. So you're a mortgage branch manager. I don't care if you work for a credit union, if you're a private mortgage banker, you work for depository, doesn't matter. Broker. We're tackling a very touchy subject called when should I move companies? Wow.
That's a loaded one.
When should I move companies? Let me just start with one idea, and then, Robyn, I'm going to kick it to you. Here's the biggest problem I see. If you really have a beef with a company, I don't know what it is. Could be pricing, could be process, loans are closing late, could be lack of product, it could be whatever, right? Mm-hmm. Whatever you're frustrated about. Sit down, articulate your thoughts on a Word document, and I always use top three things I need. Set up a meeting, send it to whoever your boss is in advance, and say, I want to meet on these things. Mm-hmm. I want to stay here because I don't like to change companies, but I'm very frustrated about these things, mm-hmm. and I want to talk about it. Okay? Then you have a meeting. And if you set dates like, hey, could you get this one done by this date? Could you get this one done a couple months later? Could you get this one done? And put it in writing. And they will either do the list or they won't, right? That's an example of how to handle conflict. Mm-hmm. Instead, what people do is they're like, oh, I'm frustrated. Someone's waving this check. I'm going to try and move. And then you lose half your people. People are crying, and you could have solved it where you're at. Most of the time, I would say. So I think people move companies because they're afraid of conflict. If you just know how to have conflict, like I was having this conversation last night. I'm dating this gal, and I kind of like her. She's really good. And she's very direct like me.
You're like, I kind of like her. She's really good.
We get along. And she brought up something this last weekend that I did that kind of pissed her off. But she wasn't yelling at me, wasn't emotional. She just said, hey, this kind of frustrated me. And I said, why? And she explained it. I said, oh, I didn't mean it that way at all. She said, oh, you didn't? No. Right? So it was just a little conflict. Uh-huh. People struggle with conflict so bad, I can't tell you. Uh-huh. So bad. It is a disease. And it's just not necessary. Uh-huh. I just had a guy want to leave my company. And I said, bud, did you check this out? Did you check this out? Did you check this out? No. I said, I think you better do some checking. And like, that sounds crazy. So he checked their pricing. Their pricing was 70 basis points worse. Uh-huh. He's like, I'm glad you had me check that. I'm staying. Like, dude, are you an idiot? Like, you got to do research, right? I had another guy check another company's financials. They haven't made money in over 2 years, and their cash is almost zero. Because I made them get their audited financials. Any mortgage company can give that to you. I'll give you mine if you want to see them, right? And if the company's not making money and they don't have much cash, which you can see on their balance sheet, you probably shouldn't go to work there. So lack of conflict and lack of research is a major problem. Just emotional. I got a hangnail. I'm going to leave. Yeah. Like, that's so dumb.
Yeah.
All right.
Robyn,
over to you.
I mean, I think you're right. And I think it's kind of a catch-22. You guys are probably like, hey, wait a minute. Aren't you guys trying to recruit and get people in the door? The answer is yes. And, aren't you, you obviously don't want people to leave. The answer is also yes. And I've said to Todd countless times, I don't envy a single owner of any company in mortgage in the last few years. I don't envy a single branch manager in the mortgage companies in the last few years. And it's an interesting dynamic that everybody has kind of fallen into where, problems, if you will, that are in any company, I think almost always right now land in two categories. And I'm not going to be popular for saying this, and this isn't all things, but most of the time it lands from lack of production in the last couple of years. And so as a result, it's incredibly hard to not say, what if I moved over here, I would do better. right? That it's a mentality that has been created and fueled in the industry in general. I'm with you, Todd, like, hey, work it out if you can. And then if you can't, and we tell our recruits this. So that's what's funny is that, we tell people that are looking at us, like, why are you leaving? Does it make sense for you to leave? I think you say that, I say that, like, why would you make a lateral move, if you will, right? Maybe I'll give you an example. Somebody says to me, hey, I do almost all one-time closed construction loans. Would I recruit them?
Not our product.
No, it's not our product, which is okay, right? Like, just because you have an NMLS number doesn't mean that we should be dragging you through the door. And I think the industry is both scared and bouncing around, and then also capitalizing, right? Potentially on the fear and the opportunity and offering, and then maybe it's not all that it cracked up to be. And so to me, when you would move a company in general, is knowing that, yes, you've addressed the conflict. Yes, you've given it time to work its way through. And then that you've actually done your diligence and your research at a high level. And Todd, I can't tell you how many people I've talked to, which is why I kind of suggested this title, even if it is a little bit of a loaded gun in some ways. I cannot tell you how many people I have talked to that have left a company and later made more than one move, 2 moves, 3 moves, 4 moves. And they'll say, you know what? The best company that I worked at was 4 companies ago, if I'm being honest. Now that I've seen the difference, it's no different than I cannot tell you how many people I have literally met with around, their marriages and those kind of things. Friends, you've seen it in your social circles, and I bet everybody listening right now has seen it in theirs, where you're like, doesn't feel that broken. Are you really getting a divorce? And they're like, yeah, I'm just not happy. You know what I mean? You're like, why? And they just can't, there's not even a real articulation. Like, I just need to focus on me, and it just doesn't work anymore. And then 1 relationship, 2 relationship, 3 relationships later, they're like, you know what? I don't think it was actually that bad. And so the one thing that I would say is that, yes, people are going to move. And you know what? Some of those moves are huge wins. I don't take it lightly. I know you don't either. When people jump into summit funding, I always tell people moves are hard. And my goal is that long term, you say, this was a really good decision for me and my business, right? It was the right decision for me and my business. And that's on us and them to uphold, right? To make sure that there's success there and alignment. So many people these days are moving for lack of funds, for lack of their own self-esteem and being able to get out of the rut, if you will, of the industry. I need a fresh start. I need a new start. Sometimes that's a spark within themselves, if you will. And then there's all these other valid reasons, like, hey, I know I don't do well if I don't love and feel connected with who I work for and with. That's a real thing for me, right? Like, if you disappeared, Todd, handed it over to another leader, and I had no alignment, I'd probably look at leaving Summit Funding. That's the truth. Because I have a relationship with you, right? So everyone has different things. I'm not saying their values are wrong or right, but the lack of true knowledge, awareness of themselves and other people and their ability to have conflict. And then if you're a leader, especially if you're a branch manager, like everybody that's listening potentially and hopefully is, what do your people really feel? What do they want? Because I don't know about you, Todd, but as a leader, that's a big responsibility, right? What do my people really need? And when you're a leader, you choose to eat last, not first. And I think that a lot of what we've seen is leaders that choose to eat first and expect their people to follow. And so, do your diligence. Make sure it's really broken, and then know that you're doing it with all the right intentions. And at that point, you won't make a silly decision, right? You won't make an emotional decision. You'll make the right decision for you and your people to take the next step in their mortgage career.
Yeah, just to add to that, of a story, one's a story, and then I got a few bullet points. So I was talking to a loan officer, and he got into talking about, like, you ever have these conversations and they're trying to roundabout ask you a question, but they don't really ask it.
Yeah.
And he was asking me for about 10 minutes about this company and that company and their financial position and stuff. And I was like, but I don't have their financials, I don't know. And then it dawned on me in the moment. He's like, he's asking about Summit. So I pulled up my net worth statement and texted it to him, and I said, I know what you're asking now. Pull up your text. He pulled it up. I said, that's my net worth statement. Any other questions? He's like, no, I'm good. I said, just come out and ask me.
Yeah.
Just ask me. Like, it's okay. Right? So, because it's scary out there. There's a lot of craziness. I talked to a gentleman who was our correspondent when we did correspondent with Wells Fargo for 20 years. And Wells Fargo got out of correspondent. Now he's at another company. He's just calling to ask me some advice this week. So I'm talking to him. He says, hey, what the heck's going on? I said, what do you mean? He says, we have 1 or 2 correspondents going out of business a week. And I said, yeah, it's kind of subtle, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's some subtle. So if a company's in financial problems, okay, yeah, that's going to be a problem. The 3 things that I would say is, if you can't articulate in writing very specifically what you're frustrated about, then it's a feeling.
Really good tactic. And this is great advice for loan officers too, right? That are upset with you if you're the branch manager. So really good. Yeah.
If you can't articulate it, then it's probably just a feeling that you need to fix, right? The feelings come from you, not from anyone else. Number 2 is a hard one. Don't violate your own value system. That's a hard one.
Can I add to that for a second?
Yeah.
I was talking to a loan officer. She's making a change. And she really wasn't going to make a change. She's not been thrilled, but, kind of working things through with her company. And all of a sudden, she wants to make a change. And I said, why? Why so sudden? And she said, the company got wind that I was even thinking about it. And they called me up, leader, not the leader, a leader, and dropped more cuss words on me and screaming and yelling and ultimatums in 5 minutes. And I thought, I didn't even know if I was leaving, but I am now. And on principle, she left without even having another company lined up. She left immediately. That's a value, right? That's a value of saying, I'm not willing to compromise that. And
yeah, I'll give you an example just to make it clear. You discover 5 people in the office are doing fraud. Okay, yeah, probably, and you have proof, like you've seen it. Mm-hmm. Okay, probably not good, right? So there's things like that. That's a value thing. Not good. So the last one is a tough one, and Robyn and I and several other people have been to a leadership course called Rapport Leadership. The first one is called Leadership 1. What it's the 2.5 days, what it's all about is self-leadership. What the number one thing they teach you is every time you go to blame, stop and point the finger at yourself and say, what could I have done different? What could I have acted different? What could I have done through my actions different? And that was I did that about 25 years ago. It's one of the most valuable lessons I ever learned. To this day, when I want to go blame something or someone, I'm like, oh, stop. What do I own of that? Now, maybe it's nothing, but I would say 99% of the time, I own a lot of it.
It's pretty hard for it to be nothing, if we're being honest, for any of us, right? If we're really looking at it hard, there's always a piece that you go, I just had conflict in our company the other day, Todd, and I literally said, listening, and then I said, I didn't think I was doing anything wrong, but I see that I could do this differently next time. I see that I could do this better next time. I own that. I'll do it differently. I didn't do it with the intentions it felt, right? It really is pretty easy, but man, a really weak skill with most people to hold up the mirror first and really dig and think, is there anything I could have done? Right? That's
very uncommon. Mm-hmm. It's, I rarely have a conversation with someone and they just come out and say, you're right. I could have done this different, this different, mm-hmm. this different. I hardly ever have that conversation. Uh-huh. They say, well, this person did this to me. This person did this, and the market did this, and the company did this. Uh-huh. And I'm just thinking blame.
Yes.
How about some of this?
Yes.
And it's very hard to do. So there's a lot to all this. I'm not saying there's not a time to move companies. That's not what we're saying. Going back to some of the things I said, someone said, well, can I see the company's audited financials? That's appropriate in this point that we're at. Every company has to submit them to Fannie and Freddie and HUD. They have them. Get a copy. That's an example. Like, that's appropriate. Is it confrontational? A little bit, but it's appropriate. I'm thinking of going to work for you. I don't want to go to work with someone that's going out of business. Robyn and I were recruiting someone, and the company owed them $350,000. And they said, yeah, they wanted to give me a life insurance policy instead of paying me $350,000. I called the guy, said, "Bud, they're going out of business."
Yes.
He said, "Are you serious?" I'm like, if you don't have the money and I'm trying to sell you a life insurance policy in place of the $350,000, that's a problem.
Yes.
So, that's a red flag. So there's things like that happen. So it's a touchy subject. We have a $100 million a year producer, $100 million last year. She's starting in 2 weeks. When we go through this process, she met with her company to fix the issues 4 times in person. And she exhausted everything. And finally she said, okay, now, yes, we wanted her, but we just kept saying it sounds fixable. And it did sound fixable to me. And they just wouldn't fix it. So, okay, you tried, you met, had 4 meetings over 4 or 5 months. Like, it is what it is.
Yeah.
So then it made sense, right? It's like, okay, you got to move on. So we're happy to have you, but just do the process right. And it's kind of like, I know this is a super touchy subject, but people say, why'd you get divorced? They cheated. Why? There was something you guys did together that created dislove, disharmony, anger, something like that. Married people just say, I'm just going to go cheat.
Yeah.
That's not how it works. That stuff started happening 2-3 years ago. You just got to own it better. Like, what could we have done different together? Not always easy to have that conversation, but you got to have it. And don't be afraid of the conflict.
Yeah.
It lasts for 20 minutes. It's not a big deal.
Well, so if I were to wrap us up on the, again, touchy subject, and there's, lots of different things to go into it. But if I were to wrap us up with just finishing with the touchy piece to it, taking massive, massive checks. And this, again, it's going to sound controversy. I can't tell you how many people I have talked to that have said, I got money from that one, a ton of it, and I regretted it, right? I felt beholden. I felt guilty when I wasn't producing enough. I felt, right, like there were all these things that came with it that they said, if I had to do it again, I wouldn't have taken all that money. And maybe not everybody feels that way, but I will tell you what, I think all the time, like being beholden to anything, right? Even when, that's why I hate Zillow relationships back and forth with realtors. Like, I feel like it makes people entitled and beholden at the same time. And I think those two things are a recipe for a long-term unhealthy relationship. And so be very cognizant of that. It's not that it's not appropriate and no money and transition money and those things, but I think that sometimes people get swooned and maybe I like this company, they really fit most of my things, but this is the bigger check. And that is just be so cognizant of it. And make sure that everything's there and maybe the money is really, truly just the cherry on top, if you will. That's a super important.
Yet it's like the movie
Indecent Proposal. Robert Redford and Demi Moore and Woody Harrelson. Yeah. It just ruined everything.
They violated their value system.
Yes.
One of the things I brought up.
Yep.
They violate. If you really know what you're doing in this business, you really are good at it. Like, you're really in it. You're making 10 calls a day. You're meeting 2 referral accounts a day. You're looking for a loan app every single day. You're going to make 3, 4, 5, 800 grand.
Yep.
So it shouldn't be about the money.
Yep.
But which be like, Todd, that's weird. You're about wealth building and all this. Yes, but doing it the proper way, not the indecent proposal way. Again, transition money to cover, lack of income because you're transitioning, totally appropriate. But some of these things are not really appropriate. They're just not. And you're selling your soul to a devil. Then they get stuck there and they want to leave and they can't leave because I already spent the money. So I'm just saying the same thing Robyn said, just a little differently. So anyway, it's a big subject, guys. If you ever want to talk to Summit, we're hiring. Our goal is to stay a mid-sized company and really love on the people and help people get more deals. So we'd love to talk to you if that happens. You can always reach out to myself or Robyn. I don't know if they... we're on social. Most people have our cell phone numbers. Reach out. Happy to reach out.
And not hard to find you and I.
Yeah. But I will tell you, and it surprises some people, I'm like, hey, did you do this? Did you try this? Did you have this meeting? Not because I'm trying to talk myself out of a sale. I'm just trying to make sure that you make a good decision for you and your family.
100%.
And that's the proper ethical thing to do.
Amen.
So, okay. Thanks, Robyn. Thank you, team. Have a beautiful month. Talk to you soon. Bye, guys.